The Tactical Operations Center buzzed with its usual pre-mission tension by 0500 hours. Glass doors slamming shut behind each arriving operator. Olivia Reeves adjusted her lightweight vest and tucked her compact sidearm into her thigh holster. Standing near the back of the main briefing room, just left of the equipment rack, she didn't lean against the wall or cross her arms. She simply stood, watching the screen at the front cycle through building schematics and threat overlays. Most of the data had been built from intelligence Olivia recognized intimately. She had helped construct the original extraction scenario months ago. A tactical simulation they now called Operation Hawkeye. Every angle of approach, every trigger, threshold buried in the operations telemetry. She knew them all, but this morning her name wasn't even on the roster. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The names of the slotted operators scrolled across the left panel in bright white text. James Hammer Peterson, Michael Venom Rodriguez, Daniel Breacher Johnson. Each name carried a color-coded timestamp and designated entry point. Olivia's name had been there earlier that week, tagged as tactical support. Now it was gone. Across the room, James lifted a protein shaker to his lips and said something to Michael under his breath. He laughed without turning his head. Daniel stood a few steps in front of them, reviewing his loadout on a shoulder tablet. If we don't bring the MP5 south on first sweep, we may as well stay grounded. Daniel's tone was louder than necessary. Buildings. Too dense otherwise. You'll end up pinned down in the stairwell. One of the younger candidates nearby nodded like he understood. Olivia didn't move. She had heard it all before. The shape of Operation Hawkeye required not just firepower and entry aggression, but precision and maneuverability through tight corridors, longer than what most tactical operators could handle without compromising their position. The building layout alone wasn't the challenge. It was maintaining silent movement while keeping sensor visibility and threat containment in perfect balance. At the front of the room, Commander Wilson, short and steady-voiced, adjusted his mic. Final simulation window begins in 18 minutes. Hawkeye infiltration profile is set with live environmental variation. All runs must maintain complete stealth through level 3. If you trigger an alarm or miss a clean shot, the hostage scenario will escalate to critical. You'll get one attempt. No one looked toward Olivia. She didn't expect them to. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, with dark curls tied in a low knot, passed by without a word and slipped a print out into Olivia's hand. Olivia unfolded it slowly. It was a floor map of the target building, the kind she had annotated herself back when they were still testing heat signature models in complex urban scenarios. It had no author listed. No one ever attached her name to those sheets. Observe. Only today, Sarah murmured, keeping her voice low enough not to carry. They've got you at observation station 2. No comes, just eyes on. Olivia nodded once, then folded the sheet again and slipped it into her vest's front pocket. Sarah gave a faint apologetic shrug, then moved back toward the tactical console. Around them, the room continued its practiced energy. Michael dropped into a chair near the front and kicked his boot up against the table leg. James offered Daniel a piece of gum, and the two of them traded half-jokes about humidity, throwing off their night vision calibration. The jokes weren't funny, but they carried status. Wilson resumed. Heads up. Communication will go dark for 12 seconds during initial breach. You'll be moving blind through the first corridor. That's when most operators lose the element of surprise. Olivia had written that timing. She remembered the exact frame skip rate in the sim log. She'd matched it against 6 real-world operations and adjusted the delay field herself. It wasn't a glitch, it was the test. But none of them knew that. The screen flashed the first call sign. Daniel's name paired with Entry Team Alpha. Launch at 0630. Secondary at 0645. All others follow standard interval. Wilson's voice remained calm. Support personnel report to observation if you're not assigned a comms unit. Remain off-channel. Olivia turned and walked toward the hallway before anyone could point her out. Her boots made no more noise than anyone else's, but the silence around her seemed different. Not dramatic, just complete. The observation station wasn't far, a quarter-mile walk across gravel and temporary matting, past a line of equipment crates stacked low against the edge of the training grounds. The air was cool, dry, the wind too thin to carry scent. Olivia kept her eyes forward. 2 technicians passed her going the opposite direction, one of them holding a tablet like it was hot. Neither looked up. When she reached the observation tent, no one greeted her inside. A row of folding chairs faced a wide viewport. There were scopes on pivot mounts. Long lens recorders pointed toward the building where the operation would execute. Olivia took a seat near the far end and opened the printout again. Her pen was tucked in her sleeve pocket. She made a small mark near the left edge, noting the shift in lighting angle since the building modeling had been logged. Her handwriting was small and exact. It didn't matter if anyone saw it. No one would ask. Outside, a shadow passed low and fast over the tent ceiling. Someone had started their pre-check early. Olivia didn't flinch. She looked down at the profile sheet one more time, then folded it neatly and tucked it under her leg. There was no communications unit laid out for her, no feed line, no identifier on the clipboard. She didn't need any of it. The operation wasn't theoretical for her. It never had been. She had solved it quietly, alone, and now as the chatter built through the tent walls, as the roar of the first simulation ramp-up hummed through the floor, she let herself blink once. Then she waited, knowing that in less than an hour, everything would change. The training compound came to life before sunrise, long before the scheduled operators arrived. Fluorescent lights in the equipment bay buzzed with their usual low electric hum, casting pale halos across the polished floor. Olivia always arrived by 0430. No badge swipe. No official check-in. Sarah, the arms specialist on morning rotation, had long since stopped asking questions. The access key card was left under a storage locker each day, tucked into the lip of a diagnostic panel. Unspoken, it was a quiet allowance between 2 people who understood the difference between being included and being necessary. Olivia stepped into the training range with a calm that came from ritual. The simulation area was identical to the target building interface, every doorway mapped, every blind spot precise to real-world tolerances. She settled in without ceremony. The door sealed behind her with a soft hydraulic pull. Darkness took over for a moment, broken only by the blue pulse of the tactical HUD initializing. She didn't flinch. She never did. The system accepted her Ghost ID without delay. Her screen blinked once, then welcomed a blank operator tag. No rank, no name. Just the number she always entered at the prompt. 314. She had used it for weeks now. The logs fed straight into the archive, unfiled. No one had flagged it. Olivia adjusted her equipment loadout, selecting items most operators wouldn't consider. A compact MP7 instead of the standard MP5. A 9mm sidearm with custom grip rather than the heavier .45 caliber most men preferred. Flashbangs half the standard size. Her choices were deliberate, proportional to her frame, optimized for speed rather than raw stopping power. Her first run of the day was methodical. Clean, a slight deviation at the 3rd floor corner. She corrected on the 2nd run, leaned the angle tighter, moved with more precision at the stairwell transition. By the 5th run, she cleared all 15 targets without a single missed shot. The hostage extraction stayed green through the corridor. The mission complete indicator stayed blue until the final extraction point. In a real-world simulation, that would be a pass. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She wanted more. Each session ran between 1 and 2 hours. She left. No notes. She saved the telemetry files directly to her drive, which fit inside a case small enough to tuck behind her vest's chest plate. The telemetry held everything. Movement flow, breath rhythm under stress, micro-corrections to her aim during critical moments. Every run had a profile. Every profile had a flaw. Except the last one. That one was perfect. In the quiet that followed her sessions, she often walked the length of the empty locker corridor. Just once, letting her eyes fall on the untouched name patches and framed commendation boards. There were no boards with her name. There were no ribbons to mark tactical breakthroughs or completion time reductions. The training room never gave applause, but the numbers did not lie. She ran a pen along the inside of her equipment bag and checked the printed overlays one more time. The final sheet, annotated with her tight scroll in dark ink, held her best run. 15 targets neutralized in 4 minutes 12 seconds. Perfect stealth maintained. No hostage threat escalation. She hadn't signed it. She never did. The data itself told the story. One morning during a double-run analysis, Olivia noticed someone standing just outside the range window. A younger systems officer named Thomas was holding a diagnostic slate, watching her telemetry scroll in real time. His eyes followed the movement markers as if he understood what he was seeing. She didn't pause the run. She held through the peak intensity moment, let the extraction timing play out, and exited clean. When the range door opened and she stepped out, Thomas didn't speak. He just nodded once, low and slow, then walked away. He never brought it up again. Back in her locker space, Olivia kept her things ordered by necessity, not vanity. Her name was etched faintly on the inside seam of her duffel. Not printed, just carved there with a blunt stylus. A memory stick hung from a loop of blue paracord. It held all 24 Hawkeye operation runs. She plugged it in every night. She reviewed the analytics line by line. She had no instructors. She corrected herself. Her gloves folded and tucked into. The side panel had creases now at the trigger fingers where she had gripped too tightly during early drills. She had learned to let that go. You couldn't fight the pressure. You had to ride it. Let your breath fall into sync with the movement. Let your lungs follow the tension. She had memorized the moment when panic tried to creep in. It was not about toughness. It was about timing. Oxygen, angle, blink rate, muscle release. She mapped it like a pulse chart. Sarah once left a small packet of electrolyte powder near the training panel. No note, just the packet. It was lemon lime. Olivia took it without a word and never mentioned it. On her way out, she left a telemetry stub behind, labeled Sim Run 314, Operation 16. Sarah never filed it, but she kept it. They both knew what it meant. The official tactical team never asked for outside data. When James or Michael reviewed their operation plans, they used only the default approaches. They practiced for standard breaches, maybe slightly accelerated on a strong day. Olivia watched them move loose in the entry corridor, trusting backup to keep them from getting pinned down. She had run the operation tighter than the parameters allowed twice and survived both runs without team support. That detail never made it to briefing. In the end, she didn't train for approval. She trained because the operation demanded it. There were no shortcuts inside a high-risk extraction. You either executed clean or you failed. You either understood the shape of the building or you lost the hostage before the target appeared. There was no middle. She knew that space better than anyone. She had built her way through it one silent morning at a time. And no one saw her. Not then. Not yet. But the operation remembered. And so did the numbers. Inside the command tent, tension had begun to override rhythm. The air was still cool, but the mood was heating fast. Operators leaned over their terminals, tracking movement readings and projected approach vectors. Everything was being logged in real time, each entry path a thread of possibility weaving through the larger simulation. A bank of monitors showed multi-angle feeds, interior views, trajectory overlays, and threat indicators that pulsed green, then yellow, then red. Commander Wilson stood with his headset tilted just above one ear, his voice steady but clipped. He watched the mission timer flash, counting down the infiltration window with quiet urgency. This was the point in the drill where either the operation worked or the hostage scenario escalated beyond recovery. Operation Hawkeye wasn't a training exercise. It was the only approach fast enough to extract a high-value target from a fortified position without casualties. That was the simulation, and it was already starting to slip. "Breacher approaching third level," someone called out. That was Daniel. His tactical feed showed him mid-corridor, diving into the low hallway with his MP5 raised. Speed steady, but just at the edge of noise detection. From the cockpit cam, his jaw was tight. His eyes flicked left, then blinked twice. "Too long. Motion sensor triggered," said a second voice. "Alarm proximity," Wilson muttered into his headset. On screen, Daniel's movement readings jumped again. The corridor bent early. His vitals spiked. He tried to hold position steady. Alarm triggered. "Visual contact. Hostage threat escalated," said Wilson. The screen flickered. Daniel's feed ejected from the simulation scenario. The system logged it as a fail and reset his operator feed to standby. His seat back in the simulation bay was already empty by the time anyone looked up from the console. Silence took over the room for just a moment. Then Michael keyed in from the secondary bay, Hammer taking lead. "Rolling hot." His tone was confident, maybe too confident. His entry speed was high, aggressive, but the angle was off. He hit the stairwell late, forcing the sim to compress the vertical climb early. The threat indicator drifted. Wilson saw it before he did. "He's wide." Multiple hostiles alerted at Corridor 3. Correction window out of range. "Time to escalation?" someone asked. 7 seconds. "He's missed it." The red flash on Michael's HUD triggered early. He had overshot his entry point. His trajectory ended in a mission failure with no contact. Another failure. Wilson looked at the screen that showed remaining slotted runs. Only James remained. His call sign, Hammer 1, was already transmitting. "Hammer 1 active. Entry in progress." He came in smooth, right on the vector Olivia had written months ago. His approach was stable, not aggressive, but enough to reach. The corridor clean. He had the first target in view, but the angle was shallow. "Visual stutter," Wilson said. "Hold the corridor," someone muttered. Then James's voice came over the channel, low and measured. "I'm pulling out." The scenario dissolved. The operation flattened. He dropped position and exited the simulation. "What was that?" Wilson asked. "I wasn't about to get pinned down in a kill box," James answered. "No extraction. Target lost," a tech confirmed. On screen, the simulation logged a critical breach. The virtual hostage scenario escalated to maximum threat level. Fail, no secondary runs available, no operators left on the board. Wilson exhaled. Through his teeth, the abort light began to pulse on the control panel. Operators exchanged looks. The sim had been built with an override buffer, but it would trigger mission collapse unless someone re-entered the scenario in less than 60 seconds. No one was cleared. Sarah, standing near the peripheral monitor, checked the file status. Every official operator was locked out. The next reset window wasn't for another 20 minutes. Wilson reached toward the abort switch. That was when the static broke. A voice, steady and quiet, entered the comm line. "I have the entry." The operators all looked up at once. The voice hadn't come from any of the simulation bay. There was no operator listed as active. The comm line blinked green from Observation Station 2. Wilson pressed his headset tighter. "Say again?" Olivia's voice came through clearer this time. "I said I have the entry. Who is this?" Another controller snapped. "You're not cleared. That zone is observer only." "Target scenario will collapse in 30 seconds, Olivia said. "I'm already inside." At first no one responded. The radar display began to populate a new heat signature coming in low from the left flank of the building map. It wasn't scheduled. It didn't match any call sign. It rode the exact entry vector required for Operation Hawkeye, but tighter, lower. The presence readings began to stack. Who authorized this run? Wilson barked. "There's no clearance logged." The heat signature registered as Ghost 3. Who the hell is Ghost 3? A tech asked. The telemetry fed into the mainframe. Clean. Uncorrupted. The speed matched the operation parameters. The HUD overlay showed a sharp movement, perfect stealth maintained, approach vector optimized. "Ghost 3, identify yourself," Wilson said. No reply. The screen showed the entry complete. First target neutralized. "She's in the building," Sarah whispered. Nobody moved. Ghost 3's signature curved precisely into the compressed segment of the building model. The same place Daniel had triggered the alarm. The threat indicator stayed green. Target 2 neutralized. Target 3. 4. "She's holding," said Thomas from behind the analytics table. "She's actually maintaining complete stealth." The abort. Light froze. The operator who had reached for the switch stepped back. Ghost 3 held position through the final corridor. The hostage indicator came on screen, threat level decreasing with each neutralized target. 12, 13, 14. Triggered from a perfect headshot. The hostage's threat level engaged inside the sim. The green beacon showed extraction successful, then mission complete. The hostage was safe. All targets neutralized. Silence filled the command tent. Wilson looked around the room. What just happened? No one answered. Every operator station was empty. Every controller still had their headset in place. The mission log updated once more, showing a completed extraction under call sign Ghost 3. James leaned in over the edge of the screen and said it. Not loud but not soft either. "Who ran that?" The radar faded. The room stayed quiet. And somewhere in the building grid, Olivia's voice clicked out of the channel. No fanfare, no command call, just one final line. Returning to observation. In the observation tent at Station 2, Olivia's chair sat empty. Still warm. Her printout was gone, but everyone in the command tent had heard her voice. Had watched the impossible happen on their screens. Someone had just executed Operation Hawkeye perfectly, and they had no idea who. The building opened in a silent sweep below her, its jagged contours rendered in perfect resolution against the simulation's synthetic environment. Olivia's tactical feed cut through it low, almost scraping the corridor floor with deliberate movement, riding the entry vector at an angle too shallow for most operators to stabilize. Her HUD blinked green across the top edge. Stealth maintained. Wind noise registering minimum. First target approaching. Inside the command tent, operators stared at the telemetry feed in growing stillness. Ghost 3 had no listed operator. No pre-filed approach, yet the signal was clean. Her entry speed was optimal. Movement output steady from the moment her signature appeared on the screen. Nothing faltered. The vector she took traces the inside curve of the building's blind spots, said Sarah from her station, her voice low, almost reverent. Wilson didn't reply. He was watching the threat indicator, tracking the numbers staying lower than expected. Olivia adjusted her position with the subtlest correction, pulling into the high-pressure segment of the corridor with surgical precision. Her left hand nudged the compact MP7 down just enough to edge the targeting reticle into the perfect position. The HUD warning remained silent. No detection threshold, no shake in her aim, no waver in breath rate. Her vitals held flat, steady. Inside the sim, the building grew tighter. Most operators would have been detected. Her movement stayed sharp. Her suit made no sound against the walls, the oxygen regulator feeding just fast enough to counteract the tension creeping in at the edges of her awareness. She maintained perfect stealth. In the telemetry stream, the phrase "target neutralized" blinked on 3 separate feeds. Olivia's tactical feed reached the apex of the operation with flawless control. Her weapon dipped slightly, timing the shot with a pre-mapped blind spot built into the sim code months ago. She knew it was there. She had placed it herself, buried in the parameters to mimic real-world physics. No one else had noticed. 3 meters from the final hostile, she triggered a single silent shot. The bright streak cut across the visual feed, trailing in an arc just inside the target's movement envelope. The system responded immediately. Protocol flared. Defensive systems override engaged. Mission successful. Inside the command tent, the red threat indicator blinked once, then vanished. Neutralized, hostage secure, extraction complete. Someone let out a breath. Another operator whispered, "What was that?" No one answered. Olivia didn't wait for confirmation. Her tactical feed climbed out of the corridor with clean precision. Threat heat blooming across the thermal map in an even wave. She didn't move fast. She didn't show off. She simply exited. The silhouette of her signature broke through the upper floor layer as the operation sequence closed. From the outside, it looked like a simple exit. No trail of noise. No sweeping movements. Just a single operator climbed through simulated darkness, perfectly silent. Inside her observation position, the HUD cooled to green. Pressure dropped. Her vitals stayed unchanged. She had not spoken once. In the telemetry archive, the word "complete" logged beside her run. A single line. Operator ID, Ghost 3 Stealth, maintained 100% lock duration, full outcome, successful extraction. Override protocol, not triggered inside the command compound. The remaining operators who had watched their own runs collapse into failure stood in silence. James stared at the screen, jaw tight. Daniel was still seated on the edge of the secondary terminal, his headset hanging from his fingers. Michael didn't say a word. "She held it," someone said from the back. Wilson crossed his arms. No one else even came close. Thomas, who had slipped in halfway through the run, tapped the telemetry line and zoomed in on the final shot timing. "Look at that." She released exactly 0.7 seconds before the hostile could turn. Right at the edge of detection. "She didn't even need backup," Sarah said. "She didn't need anyone," Thomas replied. In the air, Olivia's signature banked slightly toward the exit vector, aligning with a soft return path. Her voice never entered. The comms again. No request for debrief. No demand for validation. One operator leaned toward the radar screen and whispered, "Who ran that?" No one had an answer. The mission board still showed her as unassigned. Her name didn't appear anywhere official. But the signature was there. The operation was real. And it had happened in full view of every system running. Wilson stepped back from the screen and let the data speak. The log remained untouched. The outcome couldn't be challenged. She had done it. She had solved it. Live. In the corner of the room, someone replayed the operation on split screen. The tactical approach through the corridor played out again. A perfect arc against the simulated building. The hostile targets reacting too late. A streak of silent precision. A mission complete indicator. And then just darkness. Outside, the early morning light pressed faintly through the tinted glass of the simulation compound. The clouds were starting to rise, casting soft shadows over the training grounds. A single footpath marked the ground near the observation station. No one knew where she had come from, but everyone knew what she had done. The impossible had just happened, and they had all witnessed it. The simulation archive was still running a full diagnostic when Thomas pulled the telemetry feed from the mainframe. He stood over the terminal, eyes locked on the stream of clean data scrolling upward in green text. No lag, no interference. Every detail fed back into the record as if it had always been there, except the name. The call sign was Ghost 3. Operator. ID, blank. Clearance, none. Completion, 100, 0%. He didn't speak at first. He just stared at the operation metrics, watching the line labeled Stealth Maintained stay flat all the way through. No detection, no alerts, perfect infiltration. James pushed past him, half angry, half confused. Pull the override. That run wasn't cleared. We don't know who ran it. Thomas didn't move. It was a ghost profile, he said quietly. Not new. This isn't the first operation logged under that ID. James frowned. Then at some training plant. A test run from Ops. Sarah walked over without a word and handed Wilson a folded printout. The page was thick, corners slightly creased, already marked up in pen. Wilson opened it carefully. At the top was a building layout, an Operation Hawkeye rendering. Beneath it, a movement chart annotated in tight handwriting. Entry speed, target acquisition, extraction window. He studied the plan. The exact match. Sarah's voice was low. She wrote that 3 weeks ago. Wilson looked up at her. Sarah nodded once. She ran it in the range every morning before they showed up. James snatched the page. His eyes skimmed the notations, then narrowed. Where's the signature? There isn't one, Sarah said. She never signed any of them. A second tech at. The archive console leaned forward, tapping the key to expand the override log. One redacted entry blinked open with a soft tone. Override access, Reeves. Everyone fell silent. James stepped back, one hand curling into a fist near his leg. That's not possible, he said. She doesn't have operation clearance. She's not even on the tactical rotation. She was, Thomas said. 6 weeks ago, listed as support, then removed. Wilson didn't look up from the timing printout. She ran the operation more times than any of us. Daniel leaned over a second screen, watching the replay file run on loop. He said nothing, just let it play. The entry. The perfect stealth. The hostage rescued. Every time it cycled, the same outcome, no deviation. She ran it like she'd done it 100 times. Someone said from the side. Wilson answered without lifting his eyes. Because she has. Michael stepped in from the hallway, jacket half zipped. His expression had dropped from sharp to uncertain. He looked from the file to the screen, then to the line on the mission. Board where James's name still held the top slot. Below it, a gap, no label, no entry. The simulation system had logged Olivia's run as complete, but it had never assigned her a rank. What are we supposed to do with that? He asked. James snapped the paper in his hand. You can't let her get away with this. She hijacked a live operation. She violated protocol. She solved the mission, Sarah said. And she saved the hostage. That's not the point, James snapped, isn't it? Thomas cut in. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise. The simulation feed was still open behind him. Ghost 3, 100, 0%. Final result confirmed. Thomas crossed his arms. You triggered an alarm at level 2. You pulled out early. She maintained perfect stealth. James's jaw tightened. She wasn't even supposed to be running the op. She didn't ask permission, Wilson replied. She just executed. The weight of the words settled across the tent. On the back monitor, the operation arc replayed again. Olivia's approach traced its way across the building model in a perfect path. The stealth maintained, the shots precise. The mission complete, every frame exact. Someone brought up the archive listing. The operation data stretched back over 30 days. Dozens of runs, all logged under the same tag. No errors. No training. Flags, no debrief requests. She solved it first, Sarah said. Thomas nodded. We just didn't see it. Wilson exhaled slowly and turned toward the terminal. He typed one line into the mission record. No announcement. No fanfare. Operator Reeves. Status complete. Behind him, the operators moved in quiet agreement. One by one, they began adjusting the data logs. The names shifted. The stats reordered. James's failure moved to line 2. Michael's abort to 3. Daniel's detection to 4. Ghost 3 became the new line 1. No one argued. The tent held a stillness that didn't feel like defeat. It felt like the moment just after truth arrives. Too late to prepare for. Too clean to deny. James stared once. More at the board, then turned and walked out without speaking. Michael didn't follow. Daniel sat back in his chair and let the simulation footage play again. Thomas walked to the far console, opened the operation record, and saved a backup copy. To his drive. No one spoke for a long time. Only the soft hum of the systems remained, and the faint click of Sarah resetting the terminal for the next round. Not that it would matter. There would be no better run today. Olivia had already finished the operation and left them all watching. The training bay was dark except for the blue glow of one terminal screen still blinking on standby. Most of the building had emptied out hours ago. The official debrief had ended just past 2,300. By then, the replays had been watched twice, the mission logs had been archived, and every operator had walked out slower than they came in. But Thomas had stayed. Something about the silence in the room pulled at him. He stepped inside quietly, not sure what he was looking for. The air was still faintly warm, the kind of heat left behind by long systems running at full load. Range 6, the one furthest down the row, was cracked open and Koshkeko. Inch, the simulation console beside it, showed no user ID, just an unfiled session logged as Ghost 3. He moved to the console. A memory stick sat in the slot, the blue light on its side still blinking. Still active, still warm. He didn't remove it. He touched the key once, and the simulation session loaded. The Operation Hawkeye file appeared at full render. It opened. Instantly, no password, no encryption. He read the name in the header line. Not a code this time, not a number, just one word. Reeves. The data filled the screen. Full operation trajectory. Stealth log peaking at 100% and holding steady for 4 minutes, 12 seconds. Target acquisition clean, timing exact. Completion rating 100, 0%. No assist, no automated correction. No fallback routine. He didn't sit, he didn't speak. He just stood. They're watching the numbers run again. Watching the shape of the arc play out in green lines across a black background. Quiet as breath. Every second was intentional. Every motion deliberate. It was her, beginning to end. Outside, a soft vibration passed through the floor. He turned. Through the side windows of the bay, past the line of empty gear carts and closed locker doors, a vehicle moved across the far lot. No lights, no registration visible, no identifier. It moved smooth and fast, its shape familiar even in silhouette. Tactical transport, one of the base vehicles, stripped of markings. Wheels already turning. He stepped to the glass and watched. The engine flared once in the distance, then the vehicle moved clean into the night, its profile cutting through the lower perimeter gate without sound. It climbed a soft hill, not showy, not urgent, but with certainty, the kind that didn't ask permission. On the operations deck above the training compound, Sarah stood with her jacket zipped to the chin, her hands in her pockets. She saw it too. No comms unit, no contact. Just the single trail climbing through the dark. She didn't reach for the radio. She just watched. The terminal beside Thomas gave a final beep. The session closed. The screen returned to standby. The memory stick light blinked once more, then went dark. He left it there. In the locker room, one cabinet remained open. Inside, a folded tactical. Vest sat clean on the shelf, gloves resting neatly above it. No name on the tag, no patch on the sleeve. Just the faint indent of wear. The boots were gone. Someone had cleared out without making noise. There was no note, no trail, no message left on the board. Only the record, and the silence that followed. On the operations deck, the team that had once joked about who could clear the building the fastest now sat scattered. None of them speaking. The operation had been completed, not by any of them. Wilson had archived the result himself. Operator Reeves. Mission complete. There would be meetings, protocols reviewed, questions raised about oversight, access, clearance. But none of that could undo what had already happened. Because it had happened in front of all of them, and it had happened clean. By the time the control tower filed its midnight report, the unidentified vehicle had already cleared range. No exit path filed. No tracking beacon active. But the radar confirmed a single transport exiting at controlled speed. Course unknown. The night air outside the bay was still cool, not quite cold. Above the training roof line, the road dust settled like a soft line drawn with certainty. She had left the record, not the explanation. Her name had never needed the board, and now, without a word, she was gone. But they would remember. The briefing room felt different the next morning. Word had spread overnight through unofficial channels. Whispered conversations in the mess hall, hurried text messages between operators, hushed phone calls to friends at other bases. By 0600, the story had taken on a life of its own. Ghost operator executes perfect building clearance. Unknown tactical specialist saves hostage. Stealth expert disappears after flawless run. Colonel Robert Harris arrived at 0630, his face stern and his stride purposeful. He wasn't supposed to be there. Operation Hawkeye was a training exercise, not a command-level operation. But when word reached him that an unauthorized operator had hijacked a live, the briefing room felt different the next morning. Word had spread overnight through unofficial channels. Whispered conversations in the mess hall. Hurried text messages between operators. Hushed phone calls to friends at other bases. By 0600, the story had taken on a life of its own. Ghost operator executes perfect building clearance. Unknown tactical specialist saves hostage. Stealth expert disappears after flawless run. Colonel Robert Harris arrived at 0630, his face stern and his stride purposeful. He wasn't supposed to be there. Operation Hawkeye was a training exercise, not a command-level operation. But when word reached him that an unauthorized operator had hijacked a live simulation and then vanished, he made it his business. Wilson stood at attention as Harris entered the command tent. The morning shift was already in place, but the energy was subdued. Everyone knew what was coming. "Explain to me," Harris said without preamble, "how someone runs an unauthorized operation using our equipment, our simulation, and our building layout, and then disappears without a trace." Wilson cleared his throat. "Sir, the operator in question executed a successful Hawkeye extraction. Mission parameters were met. The hostage was rescued with no escalation." "That's not what I asked, Commander Wilson." Harris's voice was ice. "I asked how it happened." The room fell silent. Harris's eyes swept across the assembled personnel. Wilson, Sarah, Thomas, and several other techs. James, Michael, and Daniel stood near the back, their expressions carefully neutral. The operator, identified as Ghost 3, Wilson continued, accessed the simulation during an active training exercise. Based on telemetry analysis, the execution was flawless. No protocols were violated. No protocols? Harris's eyebrows rose. An unidentified operator takes control of a live simulation, operates without clearance, and vanishes without debrief, and you're telling me no protocols were violated? Sarah stepped forward. Sir, if I may. The operator in question has been training on this simulation for weeks. The access was unofficial, but the competency was verified. Unofficial access? Harris turned to her. You mean unauthorized? Yes, sir. And you allowed this? Sarah's jaw tightened. The operator demonstrated exceptional skill, sir. Far beyond the capabilities of our scheduled team. That's not your call to make, Lieutenant Mitchell. James couldn't stay quiet any longer. Sir, with respect, this operator made a mockery of the entire exercise. She bypassed command structure, ignored clearance protocols, and showed off at the expense of legitimate operators. Harris's gaze shifted to James. She? The word hung in the air. James realized his mistake immediately, but it was too late. You know who this operator is, Harris said. It wasn't a question. Thomas stepped forward, a tablet in his hand. Sir, I have the complete telemetry data from yesterday's exercise. All 3 authorized operators failed to complete Operation Hawkeye. The unauthorized operator, callsign Ghost 3, executed the maneuver perfectly. 100% stealth maintained, full extraction, clean hostage recovery. Harris took the tablet and reviewed the data. His expression remained unreadable. Operator identification? Reeves, sir, Sarah said quietly. Olivia Reeves. Former tactical support, currently unassigned. Where is she now? Unknown, sir. She left base last night. No transport plan filed. Harris handed the tablet back to Thomas. So let me understand this. An operator with no current assignment, no tactical clearance, and no authorization executed an operation that 3 of our active operators failed to complete. Then she disappeared. That's correct, sir. Harris was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was measured. Bring me everything. Every simulation log. Every training record. Every piece of data related to this operator and Operation Hawkeye. I want a complete analysis on my desk by 1400. Yes, sir. And I want Reeves found. Issue a recall order. She's to report for immediate debrief. Wilson nodded. We'll put out the word, sir. You'll do more than that, Commander. You'll make it clear that unauthorized access to military simulations is a serious offense. There will be consequences. But even as Harris spoke, everyone in the room knew the truth. Olivia Reeves had done something none of them could do. She had solved the unsolvable, executed the impossible, and proven that sometimes the best operator isn't the one with the highest rank or the most clearances. She was the one who could execute. As Harris left the briefing room, Sarah turned to Thomas. Think they'll find her? Thomas shook his head. She's been invisible for weeks. Why would that change now? Outside, the morning sun cast long shadows across the training grounds. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of helicopter rotors echoed across the base, but the distinctive rumble of a tactical transport executing a perfect extraction was nowhere to be heard. Olivia Reeves had made her point. Now she was gone. The command tent buzzed with activity for the next several hours. Technicians pulled records from the system. Analysts reviewed simulation logs. Security personnel checked access protocols. Everyone searching for traces of the ghost operator who had appeared from nowhere, executed the perfect mission, and vanished without a word. Thomas sat at his terminal, eyes fixed on the screen as he compiled data for Harris's report. The more he dug, the more impressive Olivia's achievement became. "Have you seen this?" he asked Sarah, who was working at the station beside him. She leaned over to look at his screen. "What am I looking at?" "Equipment logs. She didn't use standard gear." "Look at her loadout." Sarah studied the data. MP7 instead of MP5. Smaller flashbangs. Lighter vest. Everything compact. Everything minimal. So, Thomas turned to her. "So they've been telling her for years that her size was a liability. That she needed the stopping power of larger weapons to compensate. That smaller gear meant weaker performance. And she proved them wrong. Completely." Thomas pulled up another screen. "Look at her accuracy metrics. 100% hit rate. Every shot a clean neutralization. No wasted rounds. No collateral damage risk." Sarah nodded slowly. She turned her supposed weakness into a strength. "Exactly. The smaller profile let her move through tighter spaces without detection. The lighter gear gave her more speed and endurance. She designed her approach around her natural attributes instead of trying to force herself into their template." From across the room, Wilson watched them. He had been reviewing the mission logs for hours, trying to understand how Olivia had accomplished what his top operators couldn't. The answer was becoming clear, and it wasn't what he expected. She hadn't broken the rules. She had rewritten them. In his office, Colonel Harris sat behind his desk, a stack of files open before him: personnel records, training evaluations, performance reviews. The story they told wasn't flattering to the command structure. Olivia Reeves. 5 years of service. Exceptional marksmanship scores. Perfect fitness evaluations. Consistently in the top 1% for tactical awareness and adaptability. And consistently passed over for advanced assignments. The reasons were vague but familiar. Concerns about physical stature. Questions about combat effectiveness with smaller frame. Doubts about authority presence in high-stress situations. Nothing concrete, nothing specific. Just the persistent, unspoken bias that had kept her in support roles, while less qualified operators moved ahead. Harris closed the file and leaned back in his chair. He had seen this pattern before. Talented individuals sidelined not because of their abilities, but because they didn't fit the expected profile. Usually they eventually gave up or transferred out. Olivia Reeves had done neither. She had gone underground, created her own training regimen, perfected her approach on her own terms. And when the moment came, she had shown everyone exactly what they had overlooked. The question now was what to do about it. Back in the command tent, Daniel approached Thomas's workstation cautiously. He had been quiet all morning, watching the analysis unfold from a distance. "Can I see it again?" he asked. Thomas nodded and pulled up the mission replay. Daniel watched in silence as Olivia's perfect run played out on the screen. Her entry, her movement through the building, the flawless neutralization of every target, the clean extraction of the hostage. "I don't get it," Daniel said finally. "How did she move so quietly?" "I triggered sensors that weren't even on the schematics." "Because she wrote the schematics," Sarah said, joining them. "She knew where every sensor was because she helped place them during the initial setup." "Then she was removed from the team," Daniel frowned. "So she cheated?" "No," Thomas said firmly. "She prepared." "There's a difference." "She studied the building layout until she knew every corner," Sarah added. "She practiced her approach until it was perfect. She tailored her equipment to maximize her natural advantages. That's not cheating. That's excellence." Daniel didn't respond. He just watched the replay again, his expression unreadable. Across the room, James and Michael huddled together, voices low. "This is ridiculous," James muttered. "They're treating her like some kind of hero. She broke protocol. She should be disciplined, not celebrated." Michael nodded, but there was uncertainty in his eyes. But she did complete the mission. None of us could do that. That's not the point. The point is discipline, structure, following the chain of command. Without that, we're just vigilantes. Maybe, Michael said slowly. Or maybe we're just afraid to admit that our way isn't always the best way. James stared at him. Whose side are you on? I'm on the side of the mission, Michael replied. And the mission was completed, successfully. That's what matters in the end, isn't it? James didn't answer. He turned away, but the question lingered. What really mattered? The protocol or the outcome? The process or the result? The day wore on. Reports were compiled. Analysis completed. Recommendations formulated. By 1400, Wilson had everything ready for Harris's review. A complete dossier on Olivia Reeves and her remarkable achievement. But there was still no sign of Olivia herself. The recall order had gone unanswered. The search had yielded nothing. She had vanished as completely as she had appeared. At 1500, Harris called the team together for a briefing. The command tent was silent as he entered, all eyes on the colonel. As he took his position at the front, "I've reviewed the data," he began without preamble. "And I've come to several conclusions." He paused, surveying the room. First, Operation Hawkeye was successfully executed yesterday. The mission parameters were met. The hostage was recovered. The targets were neutralized. By any objective standard, it was a success. No one spoke. Second, this success was achieved by an operator who was not authorized to participate. This represents a serious breach of protocol and raises significant questions about our security procedures. James nodded slightly, a hint of vindication in his expression. Third, Harris continued, this same operator has demonstrated exceptional skill and tactical awareness. Her performance metrics exceed those of our current active team by a significant margin. Now it was Sarah and Thomas who exchanged glances. And finally, this situation reveals a fundamental failure of leadership. The room went still. Harris's words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Not on the part of Operator Reeves, Harris clarified. But on our part, we failed to recognize talent. We failed to nurture potential. We allowed bias and tradition to override objective assessment, and as a result, we lost a valuable asset. He turned to Wilson. Commander, effective immediately. I want a complete review of our operator evaluation protocols. I want objective criteria, not subjective judgments. I want performance metrics, not physical stereotypes. Yes, sir. Harris addressed the room again. As for Operator Reeves, the recall order stands, but it will not be punitive. If and when she returns, she will be offered formal recognition of her achievement and consideration for appropriate assignment based on her demonstrated abilities. He paused, then added, and a formal apology for our failure to recognize her potential earlier. The silence that followed was profound. No one had expected this outcome. That is all for now. Dismissed. As the team dispersed, the atmosphere in the command tent was transformed. The tension of the morning had given way to something more complex. Reflection, reassessment, recognition that perhaps the way things had always been done wasn't necessarily the way they should be done. Thomas lingered behind, watching as Harris gathered his notes. When the colonel looked up, Thomas approached cautiously. "Sir, there's something you should see." Harris nodded. "Go ahead." Thomas handed him a tablet. On the screen was a file he had discovered in the archives. A proposal, written by Olivia 6 months earlier, for a new approach to close-quarters operations. It detailed everything she had demonstrated the day before: the smaller weapons, the lighter gear, the emphasis on speed and stealth over raw firepower. "She tried to tell us," Thomas said quietly. "We just weren't listening." Harris studied the document, his expression grim. "Who reviewed this?" It was rejected at the preliminary stage, sir. Never made it past the initial screening. Because? The reviewer noted that it failed to account for standard tactical doctrine regarding necessary firepower in hostile environments. In other words, her weapons were too small. Yes, sir. Harris handed the tablet back. Make sure this is included in the review. I want to know who made that assessment and what criteria they used. Yes, sir. As Harris left the tent, Thomas stood alone with the tablet. The file was still open, Olivia's words on the screen. Clear, precise, visionary. A new approach that challenged conventional wisdom, not through rebellion, but through results. She had tried to work within the system. When that failed, she had demonstrated her ideas the only way left to her. Through flawless execution. The days that followed brought changes to the Tactical Operations Center. New evaluation protocols were implemented. Equipment options were expanded. Training simulations were redesigned to emphasize adaptability and individual strengths rather than conformity to a single approach. Operation Hawkeye was eventually modified based on Olivia's telemetry. The movement sequences she had perfected became the new standard. The equipment profiles she had utilized were integrated into the training protocol. Her ghost runs became the benchmark against which all future operators would be measured. Thomas found himself assigned to analyze her data full-time. It became a kind of obsession, reverse engineering excellence. Trying to understand how someone could move so precisely, shoot so accurately, maintain such perfect stealth through a hostile environment. He published papers on her techniques. Other facilities requested copies of her simulation logs. She became a legend without ever having a name attached to it. Sarah was transferred to a different base 6 months later. On her last day, she left. A small package in locker 427, the one Olivia had used during her ghost sessions. Inside was the original memory stick with all 24 Hawkeye operation runs, along with a handwritten note. For the operator who proved that skill matters more than permission. James, Michael, and Daniel eventually completed modified versions of Operation Hawkeye, but their best runs never came close to Ghost 3's perfect execution. James was reassigned to perimeter security operations. Michael moved to reconnaissance. Daniel found success in counter-terrorism training. None of them ever spoke publicly about what they had witnessed that morning. Colonel Harris's investigation concluded with a classified report that was filed and forwarded to higher command. The official finding was unauthorized access to training facilities by qualified personnel, resulting in successful mission completion. No disciplinary action was recommended, partly because there was no one left to discipline. But Harris kept a copy of Olivia's telemetry data in his personal files. Sometimes, late at night in his office, he would pull up the Hawkeye footage and watch Ghost 3's perfect path through the simulated building. He had been in tactical operations for 20 years, and he had never seen anything like it. 2 years later, reports began surfacing from other military installations. A ghost operator appearing during training exercises. Perfect execution of impossible scenarios, no identification, no communication. No trace, always the same pattern. Arrive unannounced. Execute flawlessly. Disappear without explanation. The operators who witnessed these events never filed official reports, but they talked among themselves in quiet corners of officers' clubs and break rooms. They called her the Shadow, or sometimes just Ghost. Some claimed she was a test operator for a classified program. Others insisted she was a former specialist who had gone rogue. Thomas knew better. He recognized the movement patterns, the equipment choices, the impossible precision. It was Olivia Reeves, still operating, still perfect, still proving that the best tactical specialists don't need recognition or rank or official approval. They just need to execute. On a quiet Tuesday morning, 5 years after the original Hawkeye incident, Thomas received an encrypted file in his email. No sender information, no message. Just a single video file labeled Operation 42. He opened it in his private office. Door locked, volume low. The footage showed a tactical operation at night. Real environment, not simulation. A hostage extraction from what appeared to be an actual terrorist stronghold. The movement was familiar, fluid, perfect. A lone operator moving through the building like a shadow, neutralizing targets with surgical precision, extracting the hostage without a single alarm triggered. At the end of the video, just before the operator exited the frame, the HUD displayed a brief message. Still operating, still perfect. OR. Thomas smiled and deleted the file. Some legends don't need proof. Some operators don't need recognition. Some truths are powerful enough to speak for themselves. Olivia Reeves had shown them all that real excellence doesn't ask for permission. It simply is. She had proven that the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, the ones who train in silence and perfect their craft alone, are often the ones who can do the impossible when it matters most. She was never selected, never announced, never handed a call sign or a headline. But when everything faltered, she executed. While others trained for the spotlight, she prepared for the moment. Alone, unseen. And when it came, she didn't ask permission. She simply held the line. Years later, when new operators asked about the Hawkeye record, instructors would pull up the telemetry data from Ghost 3. They wouldn't mention her name. Most didn't know it. But they would point to the perfect path, the maintained stealth, the flawless execution, and say simply, this is what excellence looks like. What Olivia proved was not just mastery of an operation, but something deeper. The quiet strength of someone who knows exactly what they can do and does it without applause. This wasn't about recognition, it was about truth. Her truth held steady. Through perfect execution, in silence. Maybe you know someone like her. Maybe you are her. Someone who perfects their craft in the quiet hours. Who prepares not for glory, but for the moment when excellence is demanded. Someone who understands that the loudest achievements often come from the quietest preparation. If this story moved you, remember, the best operators aren't always the ones with their names on the board. Sometimes they're the ones who execute perfect missions in the darkness, leaving only the memory of impossible excellence and the knowledge that somewhere out there, true skill speaks for itself. The system remembers what the scoreboards forget. And legends like Olivia Reeves remind us that real greatness doesn't need permission. It just needs the courage to execute. 3 months after the legendary Hawkeye operation, a specialized counter-terrorism unit gathered in a concrete bunker deep beneath the Pentagon. The room was windowless, illuminated only by the harsh blue glow of tactical displays and situation monitors. 8 operators sat around an oval table, each wearing the distinctive black uniform of Delta Force's elite Ghost Squad. At the head of the table stood General Marcus Blackwood, his weathered face grim beneath the fluorescent lights. Behind him, a screen displayed satellite imagery of a compound nestled in the mountains of an unnamed hostile nation. Operation Shadowfall is a go, Blackwood announced, his voice cutting through the tension. Intel confirms 12 hostiles and 3 American hostages inside this compound. The primary target is this man. The screen changed to show a bearded face. Eyes cold and calculating. Mikhail Volkov, former Spetsnaz. Current terrorist mastermind responsible for attacks in 3 countries. This is our chance to end his operation permanently and bring our people home. Captain Eric Donovan, the team leader, studied the compound schematic. Sir, this location is heavily fortified. Multiple entry points, but all covered by surveillance. Guards positioned at strategic locations. The main building has reinforced walls and limited access. That's correct, Captain. Which is why standard breach protocols won't work here. We need something unexpected. The general paused, then pressed a button on his remote. The screen changed again, showing the telemetry data from a simulation that every person in the room had heard about, but few had actually seen: Operation Hawkeye. Ghost 3. This operation was completed 3 months ago by a single operator using unconventional tactics and non-standard equipment. Perfect execution, zero detection, complete success. The operators exchanged glances. The Hawkeye legend had spread through special forces circles like wildfire. "With all due respect, sir," Donovan said, "that was a simulation. This is a real-world operation with actual lives at stake." "I'm aware of that, Captain. Which is why I've brought in a consultant." The door at the far end of the room opened. A woman entered, average height, athletic build, but not imposing. Brown hair pulled back in a functional ponytail. No insignia. On her black tactical gear, no name badge. Nothing to indicate rank or position. But something in the way she moved, fluid, deliberate, economical, made every operator in the room sit straighter. "This is Specialist Reeves," Blackwood said. "She'll be advising on infiltration tactics for Operation Shadowfall." The room fell silent. Captain Donovan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Reeves, as in?" "Ghost 3, the general confirmed." "Yes." Olivia Reeves stood at the edge of the room, her expression neutral. No pride, no defensiveness. Just calm assessment as she studied the compound schematic now displayed on the main screen. "The approach your team is considering won't work," she said without preamble. Her voice was clear, precise. "The southeast corridor is a kill box disguised as an entry point." "She's right, Captain. We need every edge we can get on this one." He turned to Olivia. "Specialist Reeves, consider yourself temporarily attached to Ghost Squad for the duration of Operation Shadowfall." The transport helicopter approached. The drop zone under cover of darkness, its black silhouette barely visible against the night sky. Inside, Delta's Ghost Squad made final preparations in near silence. Each operator focused on their equipment and mental readiness. Olivia sat slightly apart, her compact gear already checked and secured. Her expression was calm, her breathing steady. This wasn't her first real-world operation, far from it, but it was the first time in years she had operated as part of an official team. Captain Donovan moved through the cabin, checking in with each operator before finally stopping. In front of her, "Last chance to reconsider, Specialist. That tunnel is going to be tighter than the mock-up. Conditions unknown. No backup until you reach the interior." Olivia met his gaze. "I'll be fine, Captain. I know you will." His admission seemed to surprise even him. "Just follow protocol on the comms. We need to know your status." "Copy that." The helicopter touched down 2 miles from the compound. The team disembarked in practiced formation, disappearing into the darkness of the mountainside. They moved quickly but carefully, navigating the treacherous terrain without lights, relying on night vision and memorized routes. As they approached the outer perimeter, Captain Donovan gave the signal. The team split, with the main force taking covered positions overlooking the compound, while Olivia continued alone toward the kitchen service area. "Ghost 3 move into entry point," she whispered into her comms. "Copy, Ghost 3, Donovan's voice replied. "Main team in position and standing." "Bye." The service tunnel entrance was partially concealed by vegetation and debris, exactly as the satellite imagery had suggested. Olivia cleared it carefully, revealing the narrow opening. It was indeed smaller than the mock-up, maybe 12 inches. At its tightest point rather than 14, she didn't hesitate. Securing her weapon and adjusting her equipment, she entered the confined space with the same fluid movement she had demonstrated during training. The darkness enveloped her immediately, broken only by the faint green glow of her night vision. The tunnel stretched ahead, a tight concrete throat leading into the heart of the enemy compound. Olivia moved steadily, her breathing controlled, her movements precise. This was familiar territory for her, not this specific tunnel, but this kind of challenge. The space where others saw limitation, she saw opportunity. Halfway through, she encountered an unexpected obstacle. A metal grate, not shown on the schematics, blocked the passage. She examined it carefully. Not alarmed, but secured with a padlock. Someone's afterthought security measure. Ghost 3 to control. Obstruction in tunnel. Proceeding with bypass. She removed a compact tool from her vest and worked on the lock with practiced efficiency. 30 seconds later, it clicked open. She removed the grate carefully, setting it aside without a sound, then continued forward. Korzov element has breached the command room, came another report. Resistance encountered. The feed from Commander Steinetz's helmet showed a brief but intense firefight as his team engaged Korzov's personal security detail. For a moment, the outcome hung in balance, until Captain Tanaka executed a perfect flanking maneuver that caught the defenders by surprise. Seconds later, Ivan Korzov himself appeared on screen, his expression a mixture of rage and disbelief as he was secured by the tactical team. "I don't understand," he was heard saying in accented English. "This approach was impossible. We prepared for everything." Commander Steinetz's voice came through clearly on the feed. "Not everything." In the command center, General Blackwood allowed himself a small smile. Operation complete. All hostages secured. Korzov in custody. Minimal collateral damage. Colonel Donovan nodded, his expression reflecting both relief and pride. She did it again. Found the path no one else could see. "No," Blackwood corrected gently. "They did it. That's the real achievement here." She took her individual approach and transformed it into a methodology that others could adapt and apply. That's the difference between a tactical genius and a true innovator. The extraction proceeded smoothly. Within an hour, the hostages and tactical team were safely away from the facility, en route to secure locations. Korzov's capture dismantled the leadership of a terrorist network that had threatened global security for years. It was, by any measure, an extraordinary success. 3 days later, when the operational security had been cleared and the classified details appropriately redacted, the Kazakhstan rescue became international news. Multinational tactical team achieves impossible rescue. Read headlines around the world. Intelligence services and military organizations studied what little information was publicly available, recognizing that something revolutionary had occurred. At the Academy, as the symposium concluded with heightened energy and renewed purpose, Olivia Reeves found herself back at the same window where she had spoken with Sarah days earlier. Below, tactical operators from around the world were already implementing elements of the methodology she had developed, incorporating the lessons of Kazakhstan into their training. Colonel Donovan joined her, offering a cup of coffee, which she accepted with a grateful nod. "The secretary called," he said. After a comfortable silence, "The offer still stands. Tactical Innovation Division, your command, your rules." Olivia watched the training below for a moment longer before turning to face him. "I've been thinking about that, and 5 years ago, I operated alone because I had to. I proved what was possible when one person refuses to accept artificial limitations." She paused, considering her words carefully. But Kazakhstan showed something more important: what's possible when innovation becomes collaboration, when a new approach spreads beyond its creator. "So you'll take it?" She nodded, "but with one condition. It can't be about me or my methodology. It has to be about creating a space where any operator with a new idea, any approach that challenges convention, can be developed and tested on its merits." Donovan smiled. "I think the secretary will agree to those terms." As the sun set over the academy grounds, casting long shadows across the training fields, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From an overlooked tactical specialist to the architect of a revolution in special operations methodology. From Ghost 3 to a leader whose influence would shape generations of operators to come. Not because she had demanded recognition, but because she had refused to accept limitation. Not because she had fought the system, but because she had shown it a better way through undeniable results. They had doubted her small weapons until she cleared a building full of terrorists. They had questioned her unconventional approaches until they saved lives that conventional tactics couldn't reach. They had overlooked her potential until she demonstrated excellence that couldn't be ignored. And now, the path she had forged alone would become a road that others could follow, expanding possibilities for countless operators who might otherwise have been constrained by outdated doctrine or rigid thinking. In the end, her greatest achievement wasn't any single operation, no matter how impressive. It was proving that true innovation comes not from following established paths, but from having the courage to create new ones. Not from fitting into existing systems, but from showing those systems how to evolve. Small weapons, big impact. A revolution built not on rebellion, but on results. The future was wide open, and Olivia Reeves was ready to lead the way, not alone this time, but at the head of a movement that would redefine what was possible in the world of tactical operations. One unexpected approach at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.